Hey there, everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the next step after you've gotten some paths into the space that you're looking to have intentional plants. So we're heading to a darker part of the lot as we go here. We are making our way into the woods behind some of the chicken yard and duck yards. And give me a second. We'll take a little peek around. So, as you can see, there is a ton of shady spots in this woodline. So, today we're talking about when to thin, when to chop, when to cut a tree partially, or when to cut it all the way down, and some of the work you should be doing before you make those decisions, because collecting data is never a bad idea. So we have spent some time back here with a downloadable lux meter that uses our device hardware's light sensor. It just kind of gives a base device line readout. There's no fudging of the data, there's no massaging of the numbers, there's no algorithm, it's just a raw output. So we came around in here and performed a solar inventory, coming out at different times of the day, taking measurements with the lux meter, recording which section of the forest or which section of the field we were in, and then jotting down date, time, measurements. We tended to average a measurement because if you are in a deciduous canopy, you are going to experience dappled shade sections like this, but when a good breeze comes along, all of this moves, so you'll get some fluctuations in where the light is present. Full sun in lux is anywhere between 50 and 100,000 lux for several hours a day. Obviously in the woods, we're going to have challenges hitting that unless we are taking advantage of edge spaces, breaks in the canopy, whether fallen trees that we've dropped, or that neighbors have dropped, or that nature has dropped. Full shade plants, things like ramps, wild ginsengs, gingers, are real low-growing shade plants. Only need around 15,000 lux for a few hours a day. So dappled shade in a woodlet setting like this, totally fine for something like a ginger. Ramps. Probably something like a bay tree would do fine in one of these little clearings in between some of the trees. Once you've gotten some measurements, and you've got an idea of what your average light is during your growing season in a section of the plot that you're planning to make some of these changes to, we can come back in and at certain key points of the day, so high noon, early morning, sun access is important to wake the plants up and get cold air moving off of them, warm them up a little bit, get them primed for the rest of the sunlight for the day. Take stock of what your plants are going to need, where you're planting, and if you can, identify some of the minor trees or branches that we can cut back to manage and improve the light access for some of our intentional plants. So in this particular scenario, the sun is right about there. And so overhead, we have this tree, this tree, this tree, and this tree are all putting up a large amount of canopy cover. Primarily, my focus would be taking some of the branches that are extending out towards the southwest to bring in a little bit more light, and that'll fill in the space that we're standing in here. You can see the break of sunlight, and if we were to just open up a little bit more, we'd have some more patchy sun here and in the cover here. And we could have more shade tolerant plants back in here if we didn't want to cut more of what's off to this side, or we could open up a little bit more light access, say by completely removing this guy here, this little one. Because it's small, it is taking up valuable real estate in the sun, and it's also blocking about an hour and a half before this. That's really closing out the under canopy that would come through. So that one would be in prime consideration. It's important to remember that in the Northeast where we are, pine is kind of the apex successional species. They will close canopy very hard, relatively quickly once they get going. And the younger broadleaf trees will have a little bit of a harder time getting past a stage like this, or like those maples right in there. Something like that may take a little bit longer if your canopy is crowded with pine. So a lot of times I try to do a balanced approach and take out the pines that are taking up real estate in the mid canopy, and then some of the smaller circumference trees, stuff that would be good for polewood, not quite the right size for mushroom logs because there's just not enough meat to them, but we can use them for structure in the woods, to make trellising, rails, posts for things, anything we need. Anything bigger, punkier, like some mature pine would be perfectly acceptable to be toppers for some hugel mounds, or even just a brush pile. Those are okay too. But as you start making your cuts to improve your solar access on your site and in your woods, it's important to come back out every so often, maybe the day or two after you've taken your cuts, when you're surveying what kind of changes your new iteration has brought. Jot down a couple of notes. Do you have better sunlight for the period of time that you were hoping for? Do you still have canopy closure so that the rest of the creatures that make your food forest system work have a spot to rest, take a break, and prepare to go back out on the hunt? Small changes with large effect, so that we don't disrupt the delicate ecosystem that we're just trying to subtly influence back towards a younger state that supports a higher proportion of food production than something like a heavily grown in pine forest. That's our notes for today. Hope you're all well. Till next time. Thanks for watching. Happy planting.